This is going to be one of my more heated videos in a long time because there is a lot of idiocy to sift through here. For those of you who don't know, Superman Year One, the latest retelling of Superman's origin story by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr., was finally released after spending quite a bit of time in seemingly development hell. And in retrospect, I shouldn't be surprised by the reception this book is getting, along with the misconceptions that are being touted about it. Frank Miller made himself the enemy of the comic book community a long time ago, sometimes for valid reasons and other times for absolutely not valid ones. But it's thanks to this reputation that's been built around him online that the guy cannot catch a break. Even when he writes something well, people either don't give him credit for it, or they give it to him as a complete backhanded compliment before going on another Linkara-inspired tirade because Linkara popularized the Frank Miller memes. Which is not to say Miller is blameless. The guy has absolutely lost a lot of his old touches. His skills as an artist are nothing like what they used to be, and while his writing is in my opinion better than what most people give him credit for, it has also lost a lot of its original touch. But I am still of the opinion that the guy has done good stuff, and I think that Superman Year One could be one of them. I say could be because I also have some of my own fair criticism of this book as of the very first issue that may or may not be ironed out. But what I want to get to before that is the misconceptions that I mentioned earlier, because people are flat the fuck out, either exaggerating things about this issue or lying about it outright to make Miller look like the worst person on the planet. The first and possibly biggest one of them all is Clark Kent stopping Lana Lang from completely blow this thing out of proportion, even saying outright lies about the scenario after reading the fucking thing. Which makes me wonder, did they actually read it? Or were they just so completely bloodthirsty furious about Frank Miller writing Superman that they were in this kind of psychotic rage the whole way through instead of reading the fucking story? And not to mention that they can be quite a bit hypocritical if you call them out on it. I've seen several people say that Lana outright gets gang raped, and that's not even remotely true. They take Lana's camera, they punch her down into the ground, and while they're all yucking it up over themselves, Clark shows up and then he beats the crap out of all of them. They barely get to touch her before she's saved by Clark and then flown back home. As for the hypocrisy, the whole guy gets girl by saving her from being raped is far from a Miller exclusive thing. Yet from the way people have blown this scenario out of proportion, you would think that Miller was the only guy to ever fucking do this, but au contraire, my friend. There are at least two other big examples from other nerd-related media that are much bigger than Superman Year One will ever be, that use the exact same fucking thing and in fact push it farther than Miller does here. The first one is Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. You know the iconic upside-down kiss? That's seen as one of the most iconic things ever about Spider-Man? Yeah, you know what the prelude to that whole scene is? Mary Jane walking down the street, rain starting to fall, and four guys ripping her jacket off, stealing her purse, shoving a knife into her face, while also being pretty blatant about the fact that they're going to gang rape her. Spider-Man beats the crap out of all of them, and then he gets the girl. Now, where the fuck are the people complaining about this scenario in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie? Well, I don't see anyone. And in fact, when I've used this example as a defense for Superman Year One, how this is far from a Miller exclusive trope, people have so far not refuted my point at all. And here's the other big example. Back to the fucking Future, where Biff Tannen probably goes farther than all the other attempted rapists, because he's got Lorraine pinned down to the car, he's got his hands in her skirt is pushed back up, and he is very clearly going to rape her until George McFly intervenes, punches him out, and then Lorraine wants to suck his dick because he saved her from being raped. But before some idiot twists my words, let me clarify one thing. I am not defending this trope. In fact, I myself find it kind of fucked up too. But my problem in the Superman Year One situation is the fact that people are blatantly ignoring this being a trope that has been used by other stuff and just want to use this instance to demonize Frank Miller when other pieces of much bigger, more successful, and yes, lauded fiction have pushed this trope further than Frank fucking Miller has. If you're gonna hate this trope, hate it. Hell, you're probably even gonna get a fair bit of support from me. But don't be an asshole about it and just say, "Ah, look how fucking evil Frank Miller is. He's using this thing that plenty of other people have used, but I'm gonna ignore that stuff because I want to bitch and moan about Frank Miller." Another example I've seen of stupid critique Speaks is Miller saying, through Pa Kent, that might makes right, that sometimes some people can't be reasoned with, and you just have to punch them in the face. And to this I say, have you fucking read a superhero comic in your lives? This entire fucking set of characters and universes that have spanned the decades, almost a full century, are built on the entire principle of the good guy is the one who punches harder, ergo, he is the good guy. Might makes right is the fucking foundation of Superman. The original idea behind Superman was an 8-year-old's fantasy of just punching out the world's problems actually existing, quote unquote. And this is a mentality that exists in the vast majority of superheroes, even with superheroes that it doesn't really make sense for, like Wonder Woman, a character who is consistently praised as a big diplomat, as an ambassador, who solves all her problems by beating the shit out of them. And once again, you can hate this trope, but don't lie to yourself and all the rest of us by saying that Frank Miller is the devil by pushing this narrative, because this is far from a Frank Miller exclusive thing. This is ingrained into the whole fucking fabric of superhero fiction. In fact, the only example of superhero fiction where might did not make right, where the hero actually saves the day through diplomacy and dialogue, is Wonder Woman Earth 1. A single graphic novel in a sea of how many other graphic novels and issues, trade paperbacks, and all sorts of other shit, where the good guys just win because they're stronger than the bad guys. Another really big thing is the whole nationalism angle that is implied by the ending, where Superman is going to join the Navy as a means of traveling around the world instead of going to college or traveling around the world Mark Waid style. Well, first off, I like this whole kind of idea because it's something we've never really seen with Superman before. Yes, Clark has been kind of like a wandering vagabond. He's even been kind of a scientist beforehand in a couple of continuities. But seeing him in the army and potentially shaping his worldview from the army is an interesting twist, and one of the things that kind of tries to validate the existence of yet another Superman retelling in almost a dozen Superman retellings that we've had since the year 2000. But this once again showcases a big misunderstanding that people have with Frank Miller's version of Superman. Frank Miller's Superman is not an agent of the government because of nationalism or because of patriotism or any of that stupid bullshit. Frank Miller's Superman is a man who is afraid of people and afraid for us. He is afraid of how the ordinary citizen will react to superheroes doing their regular superhero thing, fighting bad guys, punching out dudes wherever they want, whenever they want. And it's this fear and paranoia that does manifest later on in the Dark Knight Returns continuity that makes Superman become an agent of the government, because he doesn't want people to be afraid of him and to exacerbate his own fear of other people's fear. It has nothing the fuck to do with nationalism and patriotism. And the final big stupid critique I've seen of Superman Year 1 is Clark Kent leaving Lana behind. Bitch, have you read a Superman origin story? Clark leaving Lana behind, kind of like an asshole, is a standard feature in quite a few of them, like New 52, or For All Seasons, or even kind of in Man of Steel. And that's just the ones I can name off the top of my head. Clark treating Lana like shit is kind of a thing with him. It's hardly a Miller exclusive trope. So if you're gonna hate him treating Lana like shit, that's fine. Just like all the other stuff I mentioned, whatever. But don't pretend it's a Miller thing, because it absolutely isn't. Now that I've spent almost 10 minutes ranting about other people's rants on Superman Year 1, what do I think about the book myself? It's alright. Miller's writing here is a lot better than it's been in a long time. It's not as good as Dark Knight: The Last Crusade was, because Miller was more in his element in that book, but I think he acquits himself with Superman decently well enough here. The problems are not even really kind of with the book itself. It's more of the fact that I've already said we've had almost a dozen Superman retellings in the past 20 years. And while all of them have at least something of value to put out there, except Jeff Johns' Secret Origin, which is so bland flakes, I have no idea why the fuck it exists, they are still retelling a lot of the same beats over and over and over again. And we've had so many of them in a pretty small amount of time that the deja vu whiplash is still kind of a big hurdle to get over. Which is why I'm really interested in issues 2 and 3, where things are finally going to move in newer, more refreshing and innovative directions. Other problems include the fact that John Romita Jr. can still not draw teenagers. The people in this story are supposed to be 16, 17, 18 throughout the vast majority of it, and yet everyone looks like they're 10 or 12 at the absolute most. And so it kind of makes some story beats really distracting. For example, there's this whole big group of bullies who are terrorizing Smallville. They're getting worse and worse every single year, and they've kind of got the whole town in a grip of fear. But because of the way Romita draws them, they look like a bunch of 10-year-olds apparently lording over this town, when they should be a bunch of mean-looking 18-year-olds. Other problems include some of the narration boxes. I don't know what the fuck happened with Frank here, but someone seriously needed to go over his opening narration once again, because the narration switches point of view without any rhyme or reason. Sometimes it sounds like Superman is regaling us with his own backstory that we see from his perspective, and other times it seems like Frank Miller is using an omnipotent narrator and it randomly switches between the two of them. Luckily, this narration problem is ironed out later on, but I still feel like the opening 5 or 6 pages really should have been revised at least one more time before publishing. And with that said, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Ivan, if you find this issue just kind of okay at best, why did you make such a big deal out of all the ramblings concerning Frank Miller? Because like I said, if you're gonna hate something, at least be consistent about it or be honest about it. Neither of which I've seen with Frank Miller. You can dislike the guy as a person, you can dislike his writing, that's fine. But demonizing every single fucking thing he's ever done, blaming him for things that are far from an exclusive trait of his own, is dishonest bullshit, and I will not stand for it.